Welcome to the panel, Moving Towards a Multi-Chain World. And I have some amazing leaders in this space. I'm quickly going to introduce them by name. Then I've introduced myself. Then everybody will give some background on themselves. And then we start the questions. Junjia, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. My name is Junjia, rhymes with ninja. That's pretty easy to remember. I joined QuarkChain in 2018 as a blockchain engineer. So QuarkChain is like infrastructure level project building a sharding solution for the blockchain. Before joining QuarkChain, I was in Uber, so as a backend engineer. And right before that, I just graduated from Carnegie Mellon. Right now, QuarkChain is more focused on building a cross-chain solution instead of its sharding solution, because sharding is inherently really hard to do. So cross-chain world may be another angle we get into this, to make contributions to the whole industry. Yep.
Great. Thanks so much. brantly.eth.
Yeah, hey, I'm brantly.eth. I'm Director of Operations for the Ethereum Name Service, or ENS. ENS, you've probably seen, maybe .eth names around on Twitter. So those are names that live on ENS. ENS also supports importing in names from DNS, traditional DNS. So you have like a .com or whatever also on ENS. ENS has become the identity layer of Web3. So your name can be your cross-platform Web3 username and profile. So you have like your name, an avatar, other profile data that you take with you to each dApp, and this works widely through Web3, like OpenSea, Uniswap, CryptoVoxel, Snapshot, Sushi, tons of places. You can also use your ENS name to simplify crypto payments. So you can store any blockchain address. So you can store not only an Ethereum address, but a Bitcoin address. You could store a QuarkChain address. And you can also do decentralized websites.
Cool. That's amazing. I didn't know that. Perfect. Tarun.
Hi, I'm Tarun. I'm co-founder and chief product officer at Uniland Finance. So basically, we're building a DeFi platform that will enable all the assets to get access to the lending and borrowing services. So, currently, all the existing platforms that you have, they're only restricted to few projects, only, top tokens or cryptocurrencies. So we have built out a permissionless platform, and which will basically enable you to list Uniswap-like pairs. So you have, isolated dual asset pools for lending and borrowing. And, basically you can run money markets for, any asset and put any asset as a collateral for that. So we're building pretty exciting things in the DeFi space. And also we are going multi-chain. So there's a lot we need to have talk to about in this session about how we're doing things and what we're doing here.
Sounds amazing, and we will dive into multi-chain deeper. My name is Thessy Mehrain. I am moderating this panel. I'm a co-founder of Liquality. Liquality is a wallet. Our motto is one wallet, all chains, and people shouldn't eventually have to know on which blockchain any transaction is happening or any dApp is happening. Everybody should be able to cross-chain access everything, and all the complexity should be abstracted. And we all know that's not the case. The big issue these days is the interoperability between the two chains, between several chains. So even transacting between Bitcoin and Ethereum, going from one chain to the other, isn't that easy. And so there's a lot of friction, and we all work very early in this space. I would like to come back to the question. So what exactly has your project to do with the topic of multi-chain? If you can define what multi-chain in your space means, because there are different types of multi-chain. Some of them are just on the EVMs, on the Ethereum virtual machines. Some of them are actually cross-chain between different blockchains like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Junjia, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So for the last year or two, we have two observations. The first one is as tier two layer one solution. Like I'm being really honest, it's really hard to do something similar as other layer one solutions, like put lots of resources and money into the ecosystem, attract the people, attract the projects. So we do have a kind of identity crisis that how do we survive this industry and making more contributions to the world. And the second observation we had is it's not like we have lots of EVM chains right now, EVM layer ones, and they are not the same as Cosmos ecosystem or Polkadot ecosystem that every chain in their ecosystem can talk to each other really easy. So we think maybe there's a chance that we can, empower or enable all the EVM-based chains to build something like, Cosmos called them the inter-blockchain communication. How about we have something like an inter-EVM-based blockchain communications, IEBC? So we, from those two observations, we think there's something else we can do. So how about we have a new paradigm, a programming model, or whatever you call it, a framework. We can help those EVM chains to talk to each other, like using our chain or not. Like we can be an infrastructure for the cross-chain world. So when we say multi-chain, I really mean that it's already a reality, and we want to each layer one talk into another layer one really easy, and not something as right now we have so many solutions, and that's the thing we want to build. And we do have something in mind that's a whole new mechanism for those kind of communication instead of all the traditional ways. So we call that a unibridge, and that will be built on top of a blockchain. And I think with this new technology, we can help the new multi-chain world and unlock more, DeFi potentials, NFT potentials, GameFi potential, or metaverse, right? Metaverse infrastructure level stuff.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much. So if I get you right, empowering EVMs and your definition is really cross-chain, multi-chain.
Yep.
Okay, so what does cross-chain mean for ENS? I mean, one, so you can store any arbitrary cryptocurrency address, so you can store already today. Yeah, so already you can store any cryptocurrency address. So like, even if I have brantly.eth, you can send Dogecoin to it, you can send Bitcoin to it, you can send Ripple, we already have that. Hey, Thessy's back.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay, continue.
And so ENS is cross-chain in the sense that you can store any cryptocurrency address. And I'd like to note, because a lot of people make this mistake, like I said earlier, you have .eth name. We have .eth names, which are native to ENS, but you can also import in any name from DNS. So for example, I have bcmilligan.com on DNS, and I have imported that into ENS. So I also have bcmilligan.com, not .eth, bcmilligan.com on ENS. I can store any record, any cryptocurrency address. So, let's say you can send Dogecoin to bcmilligan.com, and you're using ENS in the background. So even though ENS runs on Ethereum, it supports any cryptocurrency. In terms of cross-chain, so you can't, the way naming systems work is you have to have a single source of truth. We can't just like make copies of ENS on every chain or something. And frankly, it wouldn't be desirable anyway, just to have 1,000 copies on 1,000 chains. It's not helpful. But you need a single source of truth. But we've been developing last year a system what used to be called Durin, but now it's called CCPI Read, which basically will allow you to store subdomains and records on any external location that you want. So let's say I have the name brantly.eth, that's on Ethereum, but right now I have to store my records and create subdomains on Ethereum layer 1. With this system, I'll be able to say, actually, grab my records or look for subdomains on this other place. And that other, this is just a standard for doing this, that other place could be Ethereum layer 2. It could be any other layer 1 that has nothing to do with whether it's EVM or not. It could be a non-blockchain place. It could be IPFS. It could be just like a server. It could be any place at all, any arbitrary place. So to put that all together, I could be storing my records, let's say, on Solana, which is not EVM, right? And so you could be like sending Dogecoin to bcmilligan.com, and the records are stored on Solana, and this is all ENS.
Great. Thanks so much for that.
When is Liquality going to support ENS?
Hey, anybody can plug anything in. So we are open source. If you want to do it right away, go for it. Yes, if there's interest, we definitely are interested in plugging things in. Thank you. Tarun, next.
So, well, I'll give a little perspective of how I see multi-chain and interchain space from a DeFi perspective. So essentially, when you are running a money market, there are a few components that you would need to run it in a most efficient way. The first one is the access to liquidity. The other one being access to information. And the third one is access to liquidations. So, I mean, what's moving in the multi-chain space is, even ourselves, like we have our protocol running on Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, and Polygon. And then, when we have our next release coming, it's going to be multi-chain. But to truly harness the power of the multi-chain ecosystem, if we are actually able to have, systems in place that can actually source the information from all these chains regarding how much liquidity is available, because obviously there's fragmentation of assets with more and more blockchains coming live. There may be differences in pricing and, so things like that still needs to be fixed. Most of the work that's been done in the space is mostly in the bridging space, moving assets from one chain to another. But once we move past that, like flowing of information, getting all those, and obviously, seamless access into the assets as well, oracles, for example, that's when, the DeFi space can actually operate across a multi-chain in a true fashion. You can have an asset on Ethereum where you collateralize it, and you can borrow Bitcoin on, or you can borrow BNB on Binance Smart Chain. So having those the ability for these chains to actually communicate with each other and say, okay, the collateral has been placed, so you can have Polygon, Matic tokens on Polygon, and you can trade them, do whatever, and return back, and then you can unlock your ETH back. So I think that's where I see DeFi moving in the future. So it started with a few assets that the major protocols were accepting, and then we're moving into a space where we're building Uniland, and we'll be getting all the assets to tap into the DeFi ecosystem. But the thing with DeFi ecosystem is the assets are fragmented. There are assets on Solana, there are assets on Ethereum chain, there are assets on other chains. If they can all come together, the data can work with the protocol from the other chains, and obviously, seamless access. So that's where I see multi-chain going from a DeFi perspective, from a money markets perspective. That's going to be the next step in towards the multi-chain future.
Perfect. Thanks so much. So just to summarize, what I heard was Junjia being and his project being about empowering the EVMs, and Brantly's project being about the storing of records across different chains, and then Tarun's solution is towards creating liquidity, moving assets across chains. So there are different angles, and they're all really important to be solved. These are the opportunities that I'm hearing, but are there any risks? Do you have any concerns that are related to multi-chain future?
Starting from me?
Sure, go for it.
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah. So of course, the biggest, the greatest risk would be I think how many hacks we had this year for cross-chain solutions? Maybe 4, 6, 7. I don't know. And there's a Poly network hack half a year ago, right? 3 months ago or something like that. It's like $60 million or $600 million. I don't know. It's like, yeah, it's really about the security. It's really about security. As Tarun mentioned, the fragmented liquidity is also another issue. Like if every asset has, many places, how do you aggregate them together? And hence that will affect your capital efficiency, right? That's every person, every user in DeFi actually cares about capital efficiency. And if you have lower capital efficiency, your project will not make it. So I think for all the cross-chain, if the project's building a cross-chain solution, the security, how about the fragmented liquidity, and of course the interoperability. How do you actually do the cross-chain, right? How do you just move move assets from one chain to another? Are you actually relying on a third party, or you are just using your own server, something like that? How's your trust model? How's your security model? Are you insured? If you are hacked, how do you recompensate those users, right? There's many things to consider, but I would say security, trust model, and your interoperability stuff and fragmentability, all those factors, they combine together towards your solution, your project, and that's a really risky thing, or I would say really hard thing to manage. And if one of them doesn't make it, it's really just will be a disaster for the whole solution, I would say. That's my perspective.
Great, thank you.
Are you?
I'm back. I got it down now to rejoin really quickly. Brantly?
Yeah. I mean, the bridging obviously is the big problem. I'd also say there's been a lot of talk for many years that, there's going to be all tons of blockchains and we're in a multi-chain world and it's going to be all this bridging, and it hasn't really happened. And I think the bridging has been harder than people thought. And I think personally, I think that going from just from one blockchain to something that's like a different virtual machine or thing, I think that's especially a hard problem. It's not clear to me that's ever really going to be solved in a way that makes it low enough friction that really takes off in the way that people have been envisioning for years. We are having, of course, finally the fruition of true layer 2s in the Ethereum ecosystem, where you do have less friction moving between them and higher, and no additional trust assumptions. And my assumption is that really takes off. And I think we are in a multi-chain world, but I think we're in like a small number multi-chain world. So like Bitcoin's not going anywhere, obviously. Ethereum, I think, has won the smart contract platform race a long time ago, personally. Dogecoin's not going anywhere, but then I think there's like a long tail of things that will just kind of be around but not really do much. And I think the future, in terms of like where most of the activity is going to be like a handful of blockchains, mostly Ethereum with like layer 2 spokes. So I don't think that there's going to be like 1,000 like serious blockchains. I think there might be like 4 or 5. It's like a power law distribution where that's like really what matters. And then just a long tail blockchains that just kind of like remain like zombies for a long time.
Where do you see the risk right now?
I said, trying to do cross-chain stuff, I mean, it's hard. Mm-hmm. It has high trust assumptions. Things get hacked. There's huge amounts of friction. And frankly, I just don't know what the benefit is. I mean, especially if you have Ethereum layer 2s, which have no additional trust assumptions. I mean, I just think that's where I think we're going.
Okay, so then you're not a big believer in the multi-chain world, or at least in a very limited world.
Yeah, I just don't think we're going to have 1,000 serious blockchains.
Okay.
I mean, it just hasn't happened.
Fair point. Tarun?
So, I mean, like Junjia mentioned, security is a concern. I mean, the security of the whole system is as weak as its weakest link. And I mean, in this case of a multi-chain world, it's been bridges. And there have been tons of hacks, a lot of assets being hacked, and a lot of vulnerabilities being identified. I mean, before major hacks could actually happen. So, I mean, there's still a long way to go how these chains can actually communicate with each other, transfer assets between each other in a more trustless way. And users having, firstly, a good user experience. I mean, if you have to transfer an asset from one chain to another and, you have to wait for a week, or, you have to do 10 steps that, a new person in the crypto space would find it very hard to comprehend and understand and actually do that, then that's not actually a solution. So, it has to be simple, user friendly, and also at the same time has to be secure. So yes, I mean, there are tons of things that has to be done before, this becomes a reality. Like Brantly did mention about, obviously, there won't be hundreds of multi-chains running. Well, I do agree to an extent that, obviously you won't see a lot of viable chains operating, but then also with the layer 2 on Ethereum's, there have been certain restriction of how much can you do with the rollups, or if you are going into let's say the existing plasma solutions and all, how can you actually transfer the assets effectively between the main chain and the layer 2 and back. So that becomes a challenge which is still not yet solved to an extent that that it makes the user experience seamless. And that was actually one of the reasons why all the other EVM chains, even with questionable security or bridges, have been super successful in the recent past, because the use of these services, I mean, from a user perspective, that's actually something that is easy to do. And again, that makes it more adapted in the community. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if there are going to be 3 or 4 chains, but definitely maybe in double digits, but definitely probably not in hundreds. But yeah, all of these chains, whatever they succeed in, I mean, Ethereum and Bitcoin, they aren't going anywhere. But all the new projects that are actually doing something, obviously they are in one of the top projects. But ultimately, whoever emerges as a viable solution and can actually communicate well with the existing ones that aren't going anywhere, that are here to stay.
Yeah, keep losing Thessy. Yeah, I mean, like I said, my expectation is a power law distribution. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think that's the current reality, and that's been true for years. I just will say, like, I've been hearing since for many, I mean, I was into Bitcoin before Ethereum existed, and through multiple markets here, and particularly in 2017, there was a lot of talk of exactly what you're hearing today. It's all multi-chain. We're going to be bridging between everything. And I'm just saying, like, it hasn't panned out like at all, really. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I'm open-minded, but I'm simply saying the current. Okay, Thessy's back.
This space is so early on, if I might chime in. I mean, everything that Tarun was referring to, I mean, it's basically the blockchain trilemma, the scalability versus security versus decentralization, that is said to be only solved usually in 2 out of the 3, and often at the expense of user experience, right? I mean, knowing from Liquality and what our goal was to stay with the native tokens and being able to transact the native tokens with atomic swaps, security is high, scalability is low, decentralization is 100%. So yes, there's always something you give and you take, but it's also so early in the space, and that's why we opened up, for example, to let the user decide, right? Not everything has to be, unintermediated, 100% unintermediated, and sometimes security is not as important, but user experience is definitely all across an issue, and so this is the first part that's important for user adoption, right? So now we are at the Bitcoin conference. What what would you say to a Bitcoin person? Bitcoin maxi, I don't think probably would not want to exchange, but where do you see Bitcoin in all of this? Already it was mentioned a couple of times, but Bitcoin, Ethereum, what different chains will be there? Tarun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take that?
I mean, Bitcoin has already established itself as the king of the market. In the last bull cycle, I saw a lot of projects coming up being Bitcoin killer. And it's been established now. That's not going to be replaced, so it's here to stay. But obviously, it has become more of a store of value than a scalable solution. Of course, there's Lightning Network operating on it, but how many things can you actually build on it, or can anyone join and start coding on it and like build smart contracts to an extent that all the money markets are operating on it? Probably not. So, Bitcoin has its own utility. It had its own value, and that's not going anywhere. But also at the same time, there's a huge space for innovation on Ethereum and on other chains where you can actually have these the development community to build out new application, have a lot of use cases, and can leverage the power of blockchain from games to whatnot. So, but yeah, like there's no doubt about the dominance of Bitcoin as a dominant blockchain for storing value. But then, when it comes to adding more utilities, that's where Ethereum and other blockchains come in.
And there are actually a lot of DeFi projects now. I mean, Bitcoin is the original DeFi, but other DeFi projects on starting on Bitcoin, and they inherit the same problems, right? So Junjia, you mentioned the bridges, and one of our audience members asked, will bridges ever be 100% secure and safe? Can you voice your opinion on that, please?
Okay, so the most secure or the most trustless bridge I can think of is something very similar to the L1, L2 communication. It's like the rollup approach, right? You have ZK rollup or you have optimistic rollup. That only requires, so in that approach, you don't need to trust a third-party external validator or stuff like that. You basically have your own, the protocols know each other. So that's basically, that's very similar to Near. So Near has a rainbow bridge, also making Ethereum talking to Near. In that approach, like both, or I would not say both, but like, so one protocol is fully aware of another. You have like clients fully sync the blockchain header and stuff like that. So in that case, that's I think I can think of that's the most trustless and could be the most secure. But if you have some consensus mechanism going wrong, there could be some hacks. But I think that's as now that would be the most secure approach. But like I'm comparing this to another, there's many different kinds of bridges, right? You have the, so if I make a poly network as an example, so what you're trusting in that approach, you're trusting they have a relay chain. They have another whole chain as a third party. You're basically trusting their chain are, absolutely, not making evil things and stuff like that. Or you have another type of bridge would be atomic swap. You have Stellar C bridge or Connext or Hop protocol. They have third parties doing transactions for you as providing liquidity. They cannot make you from their protocol. They cannot be evil, but if there's something going on their incentive design or their mechanism for keeping those, third party stuff doing the right thing, I can think there may be another, attack surface. So yeah, to summarize, what I'm saying is, if you want to be absolutely secure, look for those protocols or cross-chain solutions that don't have external validator or external any third-party stuff. That will be the way to look for. But the downside is that kind of protocol design and architecture could be quite difficult and maybe resource consuming. Yep.
Great, thanks for your answer. Liquality went through the same process, and we built a chain abstraction layer, and in combination with atomic swaps. Check it out. Closing thoughts. Tarun, you want to go first? What do you want the audience to remember in terms of multi-chain approach and future?
Well, I think, the space is still growing. Of course, there are all these solutions that are actually available to transfer these assets. Like some are very secure from one part of the spectrum where you have atomic swaps, and the other one, you have completely centralized bridges. And, there are multiple approaches in between. For users, when, they are actually using any of these solutions, they just need to make themselves aware of the risks that are involved. Of course, all these hacks happen, but users, they always give preference to, how easy something is to actually use. So, something can be super simple to use, but, you don't have keys to it. But again, that's something, that has to be understood. If you are in doing a lot of cross-chain transfer, if you are interacting with protocols that actually are dealing in the multi-chain or cross-chain solutions, dig a little deep into it, see how it works. Of course, I've tried pretty much all of them, from roll-ups to atomic swaps, and of course, one being on the end where it's not user-friendly at all. You have to wait for days. You have to put proof. And sometimes, the gas fee can actually exceed the value of the asset that you're actually transferring, with all the proofs that you're putting and getting your asset back from the rollups. But then you have the other ones. So again, like the way people have actually understood how blockchains work, how these wallets work, how to keep their funds actually secure. In dealing in a multi-chain space, the security is something that users need to understand as well. There's not much awareness in this space at the moment, as people have now become aware of how to secure their keys. So, I think this is, where the next learning curve commences, how they keep their assets secure when they are operating on multiple chains.
Great, thank you. Brantly?
I guess I would leave people with ENS is the naming system for not only the whole blockchain industry, but for the entire world. And you can learn more about that at ens.domains.
Thank you. Junjia? Last thoughts?
I think I'd like to talk more about Unibridge, but I think the easiest way to understand what we are trying to build is imagine every GameFi has their own, side chains, which may not be the future, as Brantly said, but maybe it's the future. Who knows? As Axis Infinity build their own chain, so what if every GameFi had their own chains? But while the NFT are issued in Ethereum, if that's the case, because according to legitimacy of the Ethereum blockchain, every NFT maybe can be there on OpenSea. If this is the future, how can we interact those GameFi chains and the NFT asset chains, right? So that's the problem I want to solve. That's why we go into another programming model for making those chains talk to each other instead of doing just the asset transfer. We can make the GameFi chain aware of the asset chain. So, and you can build more interesting GameFi there. I think that's what we're going to achieve with our technical solution. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, everybody. We're at the end of our panel, moving towards a multi-chain world. It was super interesting to talk to you. And everybody can find you online in the Twitter space. Look for the notes. You can also go to the VIP lounges and hang out in the lobby and talk to our speakers. Thanks, everybody. And enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you all for joining. Thanks.